We are already into the month of Rabiul Awwal, where we'll inshallah be celebrating the birth anniversary of the Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As well as the Imam from whom we have the fiqh of the Shia, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. I wanted to share with you a hadith from the Prophet and a hadith or two from the sixth Imam. But before that, let me put that in a context that one of the greatest tragedies of the modern world and the modern era is basically total disregard for the laws of civility in war. This is an issue which has been part of the problem of human society from day one. But with the advancement in science and advancement in the weapons that human society has, modern society has developed, the level of harming the civilians in a war has reached to unprecedented level, especially when it comes to the killing of, civilian men, women, and children. And when you ask them why is this happening, the word is collateral damage. The niyat was not that, but what can we do? To get one bad guy, we had to kill 10 innocent people. This is what they are saying. And we see this again and again and again, although there is a lot of talk. I always remember the words of Shaheed Murtaza Mutahiri, where he used to say that peace was discussed in human society from day one. But the distinction of the modern society is that they are the most hypocritical of all. They talk more than others, and they have done completely the opposite. They talk about human rights, they talk about, civil laws, about war, but then when it comes to action, they are the one who are completely back. You look at the example in Bosnia, look at the issue of Rwanda, look at the issue of situation in Palestine. Especially when it comes to the women, the way they are being used as a weapon, to basically put down the morale of the opponents. And you look at the situation in Sa'da in Yemen at the moment, and Aleppo in Syria. And so when we look at these tragedies, yes, wherever it happens, wherever zulm happens, it is zulm. It doesn't matter it's done by those who are our friends or those who are our enemies. But this is where again we come to a theme which I have talked about it for so many years, the double standard in the approach used by the Western powers, especially when you look at the issue of Yemen and Syria. Tragedies are happening on both places. Civilians are being killed, women are being killed, children are being killed, schools are being bombed, hospitals are being destroyed in both places. But when it comes to, for example, the statement by the US government, it reserves the strongest condemnation for the regime of Syria and its allies. What about Saudi Arabia? The way they do the bombardment in Yemen. There you just have a friendly rebuke that we are going to limit the supply or the sale of arms to Saudi Arabia. You already have given them more than what they need for a long, long time. And this is where, we talk about the double standards in this issue of, and it's very similar situation, whether you look at Sa'da in Yemen, which is the strong point near the border of Saudi Arabia and Yemen for the Houthis, as well as, the situation in Aleppo or other places. According to a senior UN official stationed in Yemen, it says the politics of the situation has overcome the humanity. There is no sense of humanity, what we call, insaniyat anymore. It is all politics. The humanity doesn't work anymore here. The world has turned a blind eye to what's happening in Yemen. And this is where we have to realize that yes, zulm, wherever it happens, is wrong. But we also have to be cognizant of what is happening as far as the double standard in the Western powers are concerned. The Saudis actually use the techniques which has been condemned by international laws. They would first attack the target. And then when the emergency personnel go for rescue, then another, strike will take place. Where many of those individuals dealing with the ambulance drivers, medical professionals, then they are targeted. And this is clearly according to the UN report against the international laws. And, nobody talks about Saudi Arabia. Nobody condemns Saudi Arabia in that way, other than, UN, but UN condemnation really doesn't have any more teeth or no, force in it. And it's the same technique. It seems either Saudis have learned from the Takfiris or Takfiris have learned from them. You look at these places in Pakistan or in Iraq, when they have the suicide bombers, they would go in the marketplace, explode the bomb, and, civilians will be killed. And then after a few minutes, when people go in to help those who are injured, another explosion will take place. So it's a double strike, which Saudi also is doing. Even just look at one of the video documentary from BBC about it, about one of the ambulance driver who was killed in that way. And all these, let alone the West and the others on the side, totally goes against the teaching of our Prophet, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. He is known as Nabiur Rahmah, the Prophet of Mercy. It was a tradition of the Prophet. Whenever he would himself go with the army in whatever different situations where Muslims had to defend themselves, or he would send an army where he is not there, he would have some instructions given to them. Either himself or somebody on his behalf will announce that. And this is repeated again and again. In our books, we have it from the narrations of Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. Talking about the conduct of Muslims in the state of war. Number one, he says, two different words are used. لا تغلوا ولا تغدروا. Do not violate the treaties. If you're in a state of war and then there is a ceasefire or a peace agreement between you and the enemy, you have to stand by it, even if it goes against you. Look at the example of Sulh Hudaybiyah. One of the conditions was that apparently that condition looked like it was a disadvantage for the Muslims, but the Prophet accepted it. That if anyone from Makkah, a Muslim, runs away from there, the Makkans, if they demand that we want him back, Muslims will be forced to send him back, but not the other way around. And right after this peace treaty had been signed, one of the Muslims had come from Makkah to Hudaybiyah, is not that far. He ran away. And the Meccan delegation said, no, we want him. Muslims were very upset, some of them, against the Prophet. How can you let a fellow Muslim go back in their hands? He said, we have signed the treaty. We will stand by it. He counseled this fellow for sabr. Said, our hands are tied here. And so when the issue of, respecting the treaties, this is number one. Number two, he says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا شَيْخًا فَانِيًا وَلَا صَبِيًّا وَلَا إِمْرَأَةً. Do not kill an old person, or a child, or a woman. A very clear instruction there. Even when he talks about the environment, he says, وَلَا تَقْطَعُوا شَجَرًا. Do not cut down the trees. وَلَا تُحْرِقُوا النَّخْلَ وَلَا تُغْرِقُوهُ بِالْمَاءِ. And when it comes to the plantation, the crops, do not burn them, nor should you drown them. And then he goes on to say, and this is another quotation from Amir al-Mu'minin about it, where he says, the Prophet, نَهَا أَنْ يُلْقَ السَّمْ فِي بِلَادِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. He forbade that poison be put in the water or the wells of the cities of the mushrikeen. You can't use that as a technique. Use of chemical weapons, for example, these days, where everybody will be killed, whether they are fighters or the innocents. And this is, these are the teachings which are even valid to our present days. And this is where I would say to the Muslims, to the Christians also, it's time to go back to the basics. Go to your own religion. Look at what your prophets have said. And if you're true to your religion, then we can really have true peace in this world. One of the statements he mentions the Prophet is, وَلَا تُمَثِّلُوا. When you fight and when you kill the enemy, do not mutilate the body of your enemy. What are these rebels doing in Syria? The first manifestation on TV screens of mutilation of the bodies of the enemies was there. And these are the ones who have been supported all the time by the Western forces. And this is where we have to realize that, whether it is ISIS or Taliban or the Salafis in that way, they are doing has nothing to do very far away from the teachings of the Nabi who was Nabiyur Rahmah for us. Salawat alayhi. إن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله العزيز بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوبة وهو الغفور الرحيم ونشهد أن لا إله إلا هو العطوف للعباد بجوده والعواد على المذنبين بحلمه ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين والشفيع المذنبين ورحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وآله الداعين إلى سبيل الله بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة قادة الأمم وأولياء النعمة ومعدن الرحمة أوصيكم عباد الله بالتوبة ما سلف من ذنوبكم. Keeping in mind that we're also going to celebrate the wiladat of the sixth Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wa salam. Two statements from him, one on a very personal level for each one of us. If you look at the Dua Kumail that we recite on Thursday nights, Amir al-Mu'minin right in the beginning has a passage where he says, pray for the forgiveness of various categories of the sins which do this or that. There are about 5 or 6 of them. This is a hadith which actually gives us example of those different categories of sins, where the Imam says, الذنوب التي تغير النعم, the sins which actually change the blessing that Allah has given to you into something else. It will no more be a blessing. This is an issue that we have to realize. Many times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might grant us something as a ni'mah, as a blessing, but then something's going to happen. It works in an opposite way, and that blessing becomes a musibat and a difficulty and a problem for us. And the example that the Imam has, and this is just one example, al-baghi. Al-baghi means to violate the rights of someone. Unlawfully taking the right of someone else. And that actually changes whatever blessings that we have it can change that into problems and difficulty for us. وَالَّتِي تُنزِلُ النِّقَمِ, the sins which actually brings down punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even before death and before Qiyamah. And what is it? Al-Dhulm. The most obvious example, Imam is saying to be unjust in dealing with others. And remember this starts right from the home first. Many times when we say, oh Zalim, maybe this is Saddam only, the hadith is talking about. No, we are talking about Dhulm even when we talk about interaction with one another. Right from the family circle, to the friends, to the community, and the society in general. وَالَّتِي تُهْتِكُ السِّتْرِ. And one of the sins which actually destroys the cover of reputation of an individual. And it also could mean that the ability that we have of maintaining our conscience. The voice of conscience sometimes dies. So there is satr here, is zahir and batin both meant here. And the example the Imam gives is the issue of shurbul khamr. When a person gets into this habit of drinking, he makes a fool of himself. And then, his own reputation is gone. And not only that, that actually kills his inner voice, the conscience. And this is where, this issue of both levels of protection in the society as well as on a spiritual level is destroyed. وَالَّتِي تَحْبِسُ الرِّزْقِ. The sins which actually prevents the sustenance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the provision from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of those sins which can do that is az-zina, illicit sexual relationship. وَالَّتِي تُعَجِّلُ الْفَنَاءِ. And some of the sins which can hasten the death. And what is that? قَطِيعَةُ الرَّحِمِ. Cutting the ties with those who are related to you, not fulfilling their, rights. And, this question comes up many, many times. At least you should be satisfied that you have done your part. If others don't do it, you just do the minimum and that's it. And so it cannot be a total cut. You have to still maintain your minimum relationship with those who are related to you. If they are good, you can increase in your goodness, in your ties with them. If they are not good with you, at least, maintain your part of being, maintaining the minimum level there. وَالَّتِي تَرُدُّ الدُّعَاء وَتُظْلِمُ الْهَوَىٰ. And the sins which actually becomes a barrier between your dua and prayer from being accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or sometimes even it creates a problem in the weather, where you have this very dark, clouds coming in at unusual times. And what are those elements where even the dua is prevented from reaching to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? عقوق الوالدين. To cause distress to the parents, to do something which puts them under distress. Of course, it is a matter of, them being in distress for your sake. It's not an issue of selfish, level of distress we are talking about. No. It's not that if the father or mother says you must divorce your wife. No, that's not uququl walidain. Uququl walidain means where a father or mother becomes distressed because you are doing something which is going to hurt yourself. That's the main issue. So it's not a selfishness on their side, rather it's their concern for their child. One more hadith on this issue from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. On a very different topic, and this is to do with the issue of, sharing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us with those who are in need but not part of our faith or mazhab. We talked about it many, many times. We have various programs going on, Out of the Cold and other programs where actually we help non-Muslims. And sometimes people have problem with that, and we talked about it for many, many times. One more example from the sixth Imam is very relevant here, where the Musadif is one of the companions of the Imam. He says, once I was traveling, and probably this was after Hajj, between Mecca and Medina, before or after it. And he says, we happened to pass by, and we saw there was a tree a little bit far away from the main road. And by the trunk there, we saw somebody was lying down. And it looked like this person was in distress. And so Imam says to his companion, let us divert our path. Let's go there. فَإِنِّي أَخَافُ أَنْ يَكُونَ قَدْ أَصَابَهُ الْعَطْشُ. I suspect maybe he has run out of water and he's thirsty, and therefore he's just lying down there on the ground, cannot even move. So he said we went. We turned our animals towards there, the horse or camel or whatever it was. When we reached there, he says we saw that رَجُلٌ مِنَ النَّصَارَى. By his appearance, he looked like a Christian fellow. And so Imam asked him, أَعَطْشَانَ أَنْتَ? Are you thirsty? You run out of water? And he said, yes. So Imam asked Musadif, he says, get down from your horse and give him the water. He says, I got down and gave him water. Then we got back and continued our journey. He says, but then I asked the Imam. He says, I asked him, هَذَا نَصْرَانِيٌّ أَفَنَتَصَدَّقَ عَلَى نَصْرَانِيٍّ. He was a Christian. Do we give charity, to a Christian? And Imam says, نعم إذا كانوا بمثل هذه الحالة. When you see somebody in this situation, it doesn't matter whether he's a Nasrani or غير Nasrani or whatever, you have to help that person. And this is the extension of that dimension of the Prophet, where he is known as Nabiyyur Rahmah. Our A'imma also are A'immatur Rahmah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to understand the wisdom of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, and to be among their true followers. Allahumma salli ala Sayyid al-Mursaleen wa Shafi al-Mudhnibeen Nabiyyina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. وعلى إمام المتقين وأمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله عليه. وعلى سيدة نساء العالمين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها. وعلى سيد الشباب أهل الجنة الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء عليهم الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على مولانا الحجة بن الحسن صاحب العصر والزمان. ماحي آثار البدء والطغيان هادم أبنية الشرك والنفاق حاسد فر البغي والشقاق. صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام ما اتصلت الليالي والأيام. اللهم عجل فرج وصح المخرج واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.